Okay, we are recording. Let me get us to Facebook. Peer page. Okay, it says it's preparing, so just give it a couple of minutes here. A couple seconds. Maybe. Okay. Title. I don't think I put a title last time, so this time I am.
It's a mystery.
I know, I'm like, I don't even know why it's asking me to do that, but okay, we're just gonna put in some basics here. Okay, we should be going live in just a second.
Oh, dang.
Corey, do you want to do the participants as they pop in?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm having them come in. I'm clicking them as they come in there.
Okay, cool. Let's make sure we live. Does it say we're live somewhere?
Yep, live on
All right,
Facebook.
cool.
So.
All right, we're good. We're all here. Okay, just a reminder to everyone who's entering in to the audience, when you get in, please make sure you have your videos off and your audio muted so that we don't hear you. And okay, well, we just wanted to welcome everyone to the podcast tonight. And I am Celeste. I'm here with Corey and Jennifer, and we're going to be your hosts for this evening. Just be aware that this is being recorded and it will be posted to Facebook Live and also on YouTube. So just in case you're camera shy or whatever, just steer clear of that. Today we have Wendilyn Larsen, and she is an admin for, what is it? LDS Mid Singles Real Talk. Is that right? Correct. Okay, cool. And she is in the hot seat with us today. And the topic we're going to be talking about in just a little bit is loving ourselves so we can love again. And then after we talk about the hot topic, we will open it up to the audience, and the audience will be able to ask Wendilyn questions if they would like, or ask Jennifer or Corey, whoever they'd like to ask questions to, and we'll get some audience participation. So after that, if everyone's still willing to hang on and hang out, we've got the after party that starts at the end of the podcast. So, all right, well, welcome, Wendilyn. We're excited to have you here tonight, I guess. We're going to start with a little bit about you. Why don't you tell us about you, like where you're from, how many kids you have, a little bit of your backstory. Let us know a little bit about you.
Where I'm from, I'm originally from Southern California, and I've now lived in Utah longer than there, but I will still claim Southern California. We moved to Utah when I was 10, and then I moved back to Southern California for a few years after high school, and then came home, and my family stayed here and everything. So I've been here ever since. But we still have a lot of family there, and it's still home. But this is also home. I don't know. It's weird.
You got two homes.
Two homes. Yeah.
All right. What about?
And, I mean, that's where Disneyland is. So that's
Yep.
That's my happy place. So.
Did you live near Disneyland?
Yeah, I always love Disneyland. It's a great place. I'm from Southern California too, but the funniest visit I ever had to Disneyland, you know how it says when you walk in, the happiest place on earth? It's always fun to watch the frustrated, frantic parents as they come in yelling at their kids. The best thing is when I saw this mom, she was losing it, and she was yelling at her kids going, "This is supposed to be the happiest place on earth, and you guys are making it horrible."
Well, you know,
that sounds like me.
It's the happiest place on earth until you're in line for 2 hours, and then it becomes really unhappy.
Yeah.
Right. Or you're trying to get to the park early, so you've got to get the kids up early, get them dressed, get them fed, get them on the shuttle or wherever, get them to the park, get them through the lines, get them into the actual park, and then, it's just a lot of chaos. Like it's.
Yeah, I wish I had a camera at the time, but this is way back in the day when we didn't have cell phone cameras, but it'd been so good to film them right under the sign, the happiest place on earth. And they're like, ah!
All right, cool. Sorry, when we kind of got off on a tangent there. Why do you keep
All right, yeah, we get off on tangents on the show.
do
Sorry.
that
No,
sometimes?
you're good. That's a good tangent. So let's see. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 11. I have a 9-year-old, and my youngest will be 7 on Saturday. Let's see. Trying to think what else. I've been single for 5 years last month and divorced for 3 years next month. So it took a while to go through. And yeah, I've seen a lot in the 5 years I've been single. I've kind of been in and out of the singles groups on Facebook, and hobbies, I've got little kids. So, I mean, I work and I have things that like I would like to do, but I can't say I do them very often.
Well, the kids are kind of hobby, right?
They're what?
They're your hobby. They take up all your time.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Your hobbies, raising kids,
Yeah.
making sure they stay out of jail.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, and it's a little bit different for me because I have my kids full time too, so I don't even have like every other weekend or
Oh,
anything. So they're always with me.
so you're a full-time single mama.
Yep.
Yep. I was raised by one of those. I know, at least not know personally, but I watched how difficult that can be. So as one of the children. So I bet you that's a task right there for you.
It is, but honestly, I have an amazing, amazing support system, and I don't know what I would do without them. My family is close by and really stepped up when everything went down with my ex, in a way that I didn't know was even possible. And, my sister nannies for me and watches my kids while I'm working and they're out of school. And when school is out, like, for the day and I still have to work. So if you can't raise your own kids full time like you want to, who better than, your sister and your family?
Right.
Yeah,
So what do you do for a living then? So what do you do for work?
I am a Medicare insurance agent. And right now, so I've done sales before, but right now I'm in the member services department. And currently I'm in like a specialized department of member services. It's called a care coordinator. And I basically go through the enrollments for people on a specific team that I'm over and kind of double check and see if there's going to be any issues with that policy going through the next month or whenever it's supposed to effectuate. And if there's something that was done, that isn't, the right process or something, I actually get to talk to the agents and kind of coach them through that to work on our retention and effectuation. So it's really, really cool.
Do you get to do that from home? COVID? Or do you have... That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it's really nice. I've been working from home since, I guess, a year next month, like probably like a lot of people.
Yep, I was going to say, just as COVID hit, they were like, okay.
Thank you, COVID.
I know.
Right?
A lot of people, they're like, we've learned we can do our job from home. So in our pajamas. And stuff.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
telling my boys that the other day. We were driving, I went and visited them in Utah. We were driving around, there was all these buildings with signs for lease, like tons and tons of buildings with lease signs on them. And I was telling my boys, I said, all these companies are realizing they don't have to pay thousands of dollars per month in leases on their buildings. They just have all their employees work from home. And they probably were scared in the beginning, but now that they were forced to do it, they thought, wow, they're even more productive because now people are rolling out of bed at 7, not having to commute, not having to go get donuts, not having to like talk around the water cooler, roll out of bed and they start working right away and they're even more productive.
And the overhead is like
home.
so much cheaper.
Oh yeah. I mean, you just
You don't
say,
have
yeah,
to
you just
pay.
tell your employees will pay for your internet and that's cheap, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's quite the time. I have to wonder, like, is it ever going to go back to like the way it was? I think it's kind of been altered now. And I think the workplace is just always going to have a different look and feel to it now. That's my opinion, but that's how I'm feeling.
I think the
I
workplace
agree.
is going to be different. I mean, even my employer was like super not really into this whole like working from home stuff, but we got forced into it. And I think they realize now, like, wow, we got happier employees and people are doing, better work. They're more productive. And so they're still asking us to at least telework one day a week so that there's like a little bit of a rotation of people in the office and not everybody on top of each other. So
Right. That's cool. It's convenient.
Yeah, my dad and I were just talking today about that and saying, I hope we never have to go back to the office. That it's just, it would be so different and weird at this. He works at the same company as me, originally we were doing the same thing. Now he's still in sales and I moved to member services, but we were just in Salt Lake today and looking and seeing all the buildings shut down and, the release signs and everything. And he's just like, why is it so much worse than, where we live? And we were like, oh yeah, Salt Lake County was more the epicenter and had the mandates longer and the lockdown and everything. So
yeah, they were a little more destructive in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
A little more
That-
disgusting.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna go there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could go there because it's true. I mean, there are states that went like full on lockdown and they suffered more economic disasters and unemployment than other states that were kind of moderately shut down or at least had, somewhat, different type of an attitude towards like, hey, you can have workouts in the street, you can have, lunches in the street, and we're like, LA was like, no, you can't even eat in the street. It was pretty extreme. So there's a lot more business losses in California than there were in other places. So
It's true. I wouldn't trade with LA.
yeah, I used to live in LA. I'm glad I don't live there.
Yeah.
I like to visit, but I don't want to live there.
Yeah,
Not
it's
right now, anyways, for sure.
I don't know. I've lived in California, but it was like Loma Linda. So like in the hot desert area. But yeah, I can't imagine LA. I don't think that'd be my cup of tea.
That's pretty close to the area I'm from. Inland Empire, like Loma Linda. I lived in Redlands when I was little.
Wow.
So
Okay.
about 50 miles east of LA and Chino is where we lived for most of my childhood.
It gets hot. It's super duper hot.
Yeah, that's a
out
hot part of town.
I
It's
was-
funny because people don't realize, if you don't realize, like on the beach in June, it could be 68. And then you drive 5 minutes inland, it's 78. And you drive 5 more minutes inland and it's 88. It's like, it's just so bizarre. It's just really, really weird how the temperature varies so much. And then you just go another, 40 miles to the desert, it's 100. And so it's just.
I was so surprised. I'm like, yay, we're moving to California. This is going to be great. And I'm like, this is like, I felt like I was living in hell. It was so stinking hot. I was like,
And the
Like, this is not
humidity.
what I see on TV. I do not see this on TV, right?
Yeah.
this is not how I see California.
Where are the palm trees?
This is
Yeah,
not
they're
the
in
brochure.
Hollywood. Yeah, they're in
Yeah.
Hollywood and Santa Monica. That's where they do the
Right.
filming. So
Super
Yeah,
stinking
it's-
hot. Okay.
yeah, it's definitely. I lived in north of LA, so it's funny because when people say where are you from, I used to start off with California because California is so big and it's really hard to kind of say where you're from. So you're like, oh, I'm from California. They're like, what part? And you're like, LA. And if you're like, I'm from LA, what part? Then I'm like, okay, now I can narrow it down to the county. So I'm like, okay, I was up in Ventura County in Camarillo. Do you know where Camarillo is? And they're like, oh, I know where Camarillo is. So it's sometimes people, you say Camarillo, they're like, where's that? So I start
So
big and I work my way in.
I moved to Simi Valley after high school. That's where I lived when I moved back to California.
So
So
you know
I know where
Camarillo.
Camarillo is. Yeah,
Yeah, that's where I'm from.
very cool. I love that area. Thousand Oaks. I mean, it's just gorgeous over there.
I'm Westlake Village, so
I know. I
Oh.
feel like I'm like the loner. I'm like, I only spent 9 months in Cali, and you guys are like lifers.
oh yeah, we're Californians right here.
I'm
Yeah,
like the
yeah. Westlake
oddball.
Village is in our little area. So like,
Yeah.
Westlake, Thousand Oaks, Newbury Park, Camarillo. That's the
Yep,
that's the
Normally,
101 corridor right there.
it
Party's
is.
all Idaho, And right now the podcast all California.
Yeah, right now people in the podcast are going, oh, I
Yeah.
have no idea what you're talking about.
Let's wake them up.
All right.
Oh yeah, Christina's saying San Diego's the place to be in her chat. So San Diego is nice. I do like San Diego. It's,
So San Diego is really nice because my parents were divorced. So I was Westlake Village, and then my dad's in San Diego, La Jolla, Del Mar area, until they opened the borders back up. And let me tell you, then it's not the best place. The weather is amazing. Beaches are great, but they open the borders and maybe it's not going to be so great. So who knows?
Yeah,
we'll never know.
I liked vacationing in San Diego quite a bit. That was for
It's
real.
beautiful.
Yeah, and gorgeous.
No, it is. I mean, if it's a really nice city, I mean, the downtown's really nice.
Yeah,
It's not like downtown LA, and yeah, it's and there's just different, like Hoya, just different areas. It's just really kind of nice. You know, it's just it's a different kind of California, very different.
Yeah. My ex's grandmother lived on Coronado Island.
Oh, that's
So
even really
went, yeah, the beaches and the sand there, it was just like, it's like going to a tropical paradise without having to like go on a cruise to a tropical paradise. It was so nice.
Oh yeah, it's a great island to go to. So definitely great.
Speaking of your ex, how long were y'all married?
We were married a little over 7 years.
Okay, and that's including the 2-year separation and.
Oh no, sorry. I know everyone feels probably pretty divorced, like once there's a separation. I felt like I was very my divorce was very instant and just kind of instantaneous. So hold on. So I guess we were married technically, what would that be? 9 years?
Oh wow.
I just don't count that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think some people's are really quick and they just get out of it. But like I had a really long separation in between. Actually, I had a really long just progression with issues and then separation and then finally the divorce. And so when I finally got to the actual divorce, I was like, I'd already gone through the healing process. I'd already gone through like 4.5 years of counseling. Like I had all this stuff I was just ready to go. And so I was like, whew, my gate went open and I just went running. And people always are like, you've only been divorced how long? I'm like, on paper, but there's a lot of story that goes on with that. So yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah, mine was almost a year and a half of like living under the same roof. It was like living in the same house. It was different rooms, but I filed in like summer, like June of 2013, and then it wasn't until like November of 2014 when my youngest son finally went off on his mission, and then the house was empty, and then it was just my soon-to-be ex and I, and then she moved out. So it was a long process, and it's tough being under the same roof, under the same household. It was just, it's complicated. It really
I don't think I could do that. That would be.
Well, when you live in California, you find a way, because she was like, "You're gonna pay for my apartment. You're gonna pay for all my bills." I'm like, I can't afford that. So like, look, I'll just move into one of the bedrooms and I'll leave you alone. But
we will find a way.
Yeah, I said, I can't pay. I said, that's like my whole paycheck just to pay like the mortgage and your rent. That's not gonna happen. And then I got to pay spousal support if she moved out. So that was like, I'm like, there's no way I can afford that. So
yeah.
All right. So I was curious. You didn't mention that you went on a mission. Is that something you did for the church, or have you been active your whole life? Are you convert?
So I was born into the church. I was born under the covenant and everything. I've not been active my whole life. I've never doubted the church. I've never looked into other religions. I've never questioned my testimony, just my ability to live it, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just some times when I just kind of said, this is too much. This is too much pressure. This is too much responsibility. This is, and I mean, there was other things definitely attached to that factored into that. I wasn't really interested in dating much in high school. I went to a couple of dances, but I didn't even like get my first kiss till I was 19. And from that point on, I kind of gave myself an adolescence at 19. But the problem is when you do that as a young adult, the consequences are a lot bigger than for a teenager, to go through their little rebellious period. So
Mhm.
yeah, I put my parents through a lot for a few years.
I
Put
think though
myself
that
through a lot.
I think that in the church though, if you're born in the church, a lot of people might struggle with that. I think that your story might be really similar to a lot of people and the feelings that people might have at certain times in their life. It might not be a constant. We might be stronger at times than other times. But I think that if we all look at our lives, I know that at the age of 16, yeah, I was still a member, but I had my doubts. I was questioning things. Because my parents were divorced as well. So I think that there's different times. And so I think the open and honesty, I think is a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
A lot of people can say, okay, this is maybe the stage I struggled. It might be different. Maybe it was 16, maybe it was 21, maybe it was when you were first married, maybe it was when you got divorced that you struggled with the church and how to live it and the best way to live it. And so I think that the honesty with that is really refreshing. Actually, I think a lot of people can relate.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. I can relate. I mean, I was born in the church, but I had a part member family. My dad wasn't a member. My mom was, making us go to church. And I had my rebellious days in high school. And, so I think we're all converts, whether you're born in the church or you come into the church, you have to, at some point in your life, you become a convert. Like, and I tell people all the time, I became a convert when I was 18. Like, I just
I like
knew
that.
at that point, I'm like, it's true. I mean, I became the convert, right? May have been baptized at 8, but I was a convert at 18. So it was just, I always kind of felt that way. And I think we go through those cycles in life, and we have to be careful in the church that we we have to accept the fact that everybody struggles, everybody has up years and down years. And we just hope that when it all comes to an end, we're on an up year.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
We end on a high.
yeah, and I think that if everybody understands that, then we stop comparing each other. We stop going, oh man, if I could just be like brother so and so, or man, that family, man, they're like all stars, and why is my family falling apart? So we got to stop comparing. That's the big thing in the church. Is stop comparing each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Give
Like
ourselves grace when we're there, and realize that this doesn't mean you're a bad person. This doesn't mean that, you don't want to be a member, or, just kind of, there's an ebb and flow, and, you kind of have to find your own way. I'm so grateful that I did the rebelling that I did earlier. That sounds really weird to say. But when everything went down with my ex, it was really traumatic. And I kind of started to veer and go that way again. But it was really poignant, because I was just like, oh wait, I've been down this road. I know what's waiting here for me, and it's not what I want. And there's, Satan does not support his own and keep his promises. So I was able to snap out of it pretty quick and pull it together for my babies. And so I never glorify, rebelling and, making bad choices. And I learned a lot from it.
Sometimes when we go through it when we're younger too, we can relate to it and go back to that, like you said, instead of, if we don't ever experience that and we get older and we experience it, then we might be gone and never want to come back. When we can say, oh no, I've been here before. This feels really familiar. And what did I do to get out of it last time? Who did I contact? Where did I go? And so I like that you pointed that out.
Yeah. I think it's kind of because I was raised in a less active family. So I was born into the church, but they weren't necessarily active. I was baptized, I think, at 8. We just didn't do a lot of going to church. And so mine was kind of different. So I kind of had to like find my way to the church. I had a good family and they loved the church. They just didn't necessarily live it, I guess, as much, kind of what you're saying. But I realized that there's a big difference between testimony and conversion. Like I had a lot of testimony. I understood a lot of the concepts and believed in them. But I wasn't necessarily converted in them and they hadn't become a part of who I was. And so once I came back to the church, or I guess not came back, but once I became active in the church about 22-ish, I started small, learning a little bit of things here and a little bit of things there. Like I was in primary and I remember preparing these lessons going, wow, like I didn't know that. That is so cool. And so I'm sharing these lessons with these like 7-year-olds and they're looking at me like, duh, and I'm over here, did you know? Da, 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 da. I was so excited about all the things I was learning. And I could see that like the testimonies I had of certain things became converted within me. And I became like, it became a part of me and I wanted to live it fully, whereas just not believe in it or, have a basic knowledge in it. So, it was an interesting transition for me into the church. And then once I got here, once I gained a conversion in all the different areas, like I just have been, I mean, like you, like I went through a horrific divorce and it was, well, actually the divorce was actually the highlight, but everything that came before that, it
Yeah.
was really, really,
The
really
highlight.
like,
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to what Celeste said.
like
Yeah,
that sounds horrible, but it was 7 years of just a lot. And so I think during that, my testimony was really challenged, but I had such a base built already that I was able to withstand the storm and kind of almost carry me and my kids through this horrific event and made it safe on the other side. And so, yeah, I think that, because I think some people kind of looked at me differently because I wasn't active as a kid and I kind of had my little transition, but I think that's what made me strong enough to be able to withstand what I had to go through or what I did go through. So it's a different route I took, but I think that's what I needed to be strong.
well, we all take different routes. I mean, that's the key in the gospel is that we have not comparison. Going back to the comparison thing is that we can't compare each other and say, well, brother so-and-so went to, went to seminary and I didn't. I mean, I didn't graduate from seminary. Does that make me a bad person? So we have to stop the whole comparison like, oh, he didn't serve a mission and I did. And it doesn't really matter. All that stuff doesn't really matter. That's all cultural stuff,
Yeah.
What really matters is between what you and the Lord, you know what you're doing, the Lord knows what you're doing. That's all that matters. And there's people probably listening here that are struggling. They're probably struggling with, dating and, maybe even, sex before marriage. I mean, there might be a lot of people struggling with some stuff and we're not going to judge. And, but they're trying. And the last thing you want happen is that to get in your head that you're no good, you've screwed up, you might as well just not ever go back to church again. And that's the worst thing you can do. You can never screw up worse enough to where the Lord will never accept you. There's no way. So
There's no sin big enough. Speaking of seminary, I actually did graduate from seminary. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And I showed up.
You're lucky.
It was like the
You know what, Celeste, you're the all-star here then, because I didn't either, Corey. So you know what? I failed. So
I graduated
No.
seminary.
Did you?
Oh, look at you, Miss Rebellion over here.
you're
What's with these
awesome.
rebel girls and like,
Okay, no,
Totally.
but I didn't
That's
rebel
good.
until
that's
later.
Yeah.
Like
Oh.
before I rebelled, I was like Laurel's class president the whole time I was in Laurel's. I was like perfect like teenager. I didn't serve a mission like officially. I got to do something really cool though, and I kind of call it my mission because for me, I mean, you talk about conversion, it's probably besides like the fundamentals of, my family life. And I mean, my dad's been my greatest gospel teacher my whole life, but I was able to be in a fireside group with Jenny Phillips. I don't know if any of you know her.
Is she a singer?
She what?
Is she a singer?
Yes, she was really, really big in like the LDS contemporary inspirational music for a long time. And later on, she went and she actually like wrote all the CDs and music for the Young Women's theme every year. But way back when, so this is when I was 17, I think. I had her as a voice teacher, and she started this fireside group where she was writing these albums. She has one about the parables of Christ. That was the first one that we did, but I got to tour all over the country with her, doing these musical firesides. Went to Palmyra, back east that way. Even got to perform in the state where the Columbine shooting happened, which was just, I can't even describe that performance. It was like tangible. But that to me, and those songs and those experiences, the people we met, the ways we were touching them, I kind of call that my mission.
Well, that sounds like a mission. It sounds exactly like a mission. So you might not have had your badge on, but you were teaching the gospel and sharing the gospel. So absolutely. Good
Oh
job.
yeah.
It was that kind of stuff that when I left, wanting to live the gospel, it was those experiences and those songs and things that just kind of stay with you that I think were huge stepping stones in bringing me back.
Right. Don't you think that the Lord kind of gives us those moments? Like I think he gives us our own personal moments. I think I've said this before on different podcasts, but I feel like he gives us certain moments that we ourselves can hold on to. Like no one else can tell us we didn't experience it. We didn't feel that. We didn't understand something that was given to us. Like he gives us these opportunities to have things that we can hold on to that are our own, so that when we hit the rough times, we can reach back and hold on to that. Because other things that, the world or other people might be able to, dispute and kind of get us all wondering, and I don't know, is it true or not or whatever, but those moments that we personally experience, I think those are anchors that the Lord gives us along our life. And I think if we use them and like just really hold on to them during the rough times, I think that's what keeps us safely through the storm. That's my opinion though. I think that's why the Lord gives us those moments to just really hold on to.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true. Because and at the time you may not even know it.
Right.
You may not even know what's going to come to your mind later that you're just going to keep going back to, that is going to be what brings you back.
Yeah.
Or gets you through, even if you haven't left, but you're just going through a hard time. There's just there's those fleeces really where he just lets you know that he's there and that it's just individual to you.
Yeah. And you can recall those moments. I don't know if any of y'all are like journalers, but I'm a huge journaler. And during the chaos that I was going through with my marriage, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I'm going to look up how I felt or what I was experiencing in these other different moments of my life. And I was able to go back and read. And even though it was me, and I remembered it anyway in my head, but rereading it and rereading my actual words in the moment when I was dealing with whatever else it was like another firm anchor I can just grasp onto. And in that moment, I was thinking, I'm a journaler anyway, but I feel like that was why, or one reason why the Lord asked us to journal, because we can reflect back and read and strengthen ourselves in our own experiences. Of course, it might be passed down to others to be strengthened and, can be used for posterity as well. But I found myself looking back on my own words and finding strength in the experiences I went through.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you don't,
I'm not a journaler.
Hard. Yeah, I'm not a journal.
I'm a journaler in my heart.
I barely wrote in my journal in my mission. It was like a chore. I'm like, I started doing weekly journals. I'm like, well, okay, it's Friday. I better kind of sum up my week. And I would just write down like the highlights of the week.
So like, now we know. Now we know Corey didn't graduate from seminary. He doesn't journal.
I'm just a heathen.
When I graduated from seminary, I literally
That's
was
an evil guy.
this little mini skirt and this like short little, just this little tiny dress is what I was wearing. But I come traipsing in, and my bishop's like, he was my bishop and my seminary teacher. He's like, nice to have you here, Celeste. I'm like, yeah, like my little outfit, because I wasn't active, but I think he was happy I was there anyway. But yeah, it was a miracle. We're not sure how
I
it
think
did
I
that,
need
but
to. I'm a talker, so you guys all know I'm a talker. I talk too much. I'm a big, long talker. So, but I probably should just do. I should do some video like journaling. I should just get on like
Yeah.
camera and be like,
Perfect.
well, back when I was 16 and driving around town, just tell stories like
yeah.
And then my grandkids down the road would be like, I want to watch some of Papa's stories.
Pull out Papa's like video or whatever. What would they call them? It would be
Yeah, they're like call it Grandpa's like.
whatever.
Yeah, it's not going to be podcasts. It's not going to be journals. It's not going to be videos. It's going to
They'll be
be
like
Holographic.
There we go.
Holograph.
Grandpa,
What was
watching my
holograph?
videos and they going, why
Holograph.
does Grandpa keep talking about YouTube? I don't. What's Grandpa saying? What is YouTube?
Only old people like YouTube.
totally.
It'd be like me going back. We were playing 8-tracks and cassette players.
This is such a side note, but my daughter sends me this TikTok, and she's like, she just sent it to me, and so I click on it, and it's this dad with this little girl that's probably 10, I don't know, and in the background, someone's talking about there's this one sound that the older generation is always going to remember, and it's always going to conjure up all of the struggle that came along with it, and the new generation's not going to have any clue what we went through. And it was like this kind of drama talk back and forth, and about how the older generation is affected by it and the younger generation is clueless. So it starts, so it goes, this is the sound, and it starts, and it's the sound of like when you first had the dial up to AOL, you're getting online, it's like the dial up sound, which is horrific, right? It has all this crazy,
Yeah.
static sound, yeah.
So I just laughed at her. She said it to me, and I laughed. She's like, no, Mom, what is that? And I'm like, you don't know what that is? And she's like, no, what is that? And it was so funny. We've gone back and forth like for 2 days because I wouldn't tell her what it was. And so just tonight, I finally sent her this like video off of YouTube about the old school AOL and stuff. She's like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get internet through your telephone, like telephone wires. She still doesn't get it. But anyway, it was just funny because like, I'm like, how did my daughter not know about AOL? But anyway, side note on that. Anyway, sorry.
Here you go. How's this?
There it is.
Right here.
Oh, there you go.
That's it.
Yeah. Oh,
she was giving me all these guesses. She's like, I don't know, like, is it something to do with the radio, or how about something to do with something electronic? And does that what it sounded like when you hung up your telephones? Like, she was coming up with all these random ideas. It was funny. Anyway.
That's what it sounded like when you pick up the phone to call your friend and your brother was online.
And someone's getting
get off the internet.
I was just talking to my 11-year-old the other day, and she has a really hard time on the phone. And she was talking to my mom. And so I was trying to kind of coach her and just be like, honey, let her talk. Like, and I was just like, she's your Mimi. She loves you. Like, it's like, I'm just trying to help you because not everyone is going to be as patient as her. Like, I'm your mom and I care about you. And so we get into this conversation and she goes, wait, so you're supposed to take turns? And I was like, yeah. And like as we were talking, I kind of figured out that she thought it was like a Marco Polo or like a text where you just like do your spiel and then they like answer yes or no when they do their spiel. And she was just like, oh, and it just blew my mind that it's just something I'd never thought about, that they just wouldn't really understand the concept of.
Yep.
I saw a video where a mom gave their son a cassette.
I saw that too.
And it was in a case, and her son didn't know how to open it up. It took him like 20 minutes to figure out how to open it up. And then he pulled it out and he goes, what's this?
We're just too old.
He goes, it's really easy to open up, son. Just relax, think about it, look at it. And he's like, he's like a monkey trying to open up a box to get the banana out. It was really funny.
Oh man, so funny, so funny.
Well, look at the first cell phones that came out that were bricks. I mean, like, forget about putting them in your pocket.
Oh no, there were
Oh,
big
yeah.
box that sat in your car.
Yeah. And I showed my kids that one day and they're like, I would have never carried that around. And I said, you would if it was a cell phone, you would.
Oh,
You
yeah.
absolutely would.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Well, I showed my kids the long cord, that the rotary phone with the long cord that could stretch to the next room. And then you close the door and you talk on it. And then I said, and then they got these cordless phones, but they only worked if you pulled out the antenna, which is like 9 feet long.
Just refer to Friends, the
Oh my
episodes of Friends.
Oh
They got
my
those big
gosh.
long antennas.
I know
Okay.
my kids are always saying to me, they're always saying, Mom, tell us what it was like when the dinosaurs were around, because we know you were around. And I said, thanks. That's really nice. So
Like, thanks. I'm not quite that old, but thanks for
Oh yeah. I mean, my kids were laughing because I said I had a pager in college. They're like, a pager?
What's a
a pager? I'm like, well, if your mom wanted to call me, because I was married when I was in college, and I said if your mom wanted to call me, she would page me, and I would get. And we had these little codes, like we'd be like star, like we had like if these 4 numbers, you got to call like right away, or you can call when you're done with class. And it was like we had these little codes that we put in the phone, and it was pretty funny. And then I get to a payphone, they're like, "What's a payphone?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, that's right." I say, "Yeah, you go up to a machine on the street and you talk. You put the quarters in." They're like,
And everybody else has had their ear and mouth all over the headset, but it doesn't matter. You use it anyway.
Yeah.
"Yeah,
How it
I don't see
was.
payphones anymore. You don't see them around town anymore."
Not really.
Not unless you go to
There wasn't
London.
COVID then.
That's true.
Good thing.
That's true.
All right, Wendilyn, what else do you want us to
Fun
know? Is there
time.
any fun stories that you want to share with us about you?
Fun stories.
Something interesting. What is it we need to know about
Tell
Wendilyn?
us a good date story.
Oh yeah. You've been
You're a
dating
bad
for
date,
5
good
years. You
date.
probably got some good ones.
So you guys, I actually didn't date for like the last 3 years. I went on my first date again in July,
Okay.
and
Ooh,
that turned
COVID
into
date.
a relationship. So I
Okay.
just got out of like my first relationship in a long time. I kind of just needed to focus on me and my kids, find my balance again, and just figure out me, before. So I don't have a whole lot of great date
Well,
stories,
what's
at least
what's
after
your
my
number,
divorce.
and I will set you up.
Jeez.
So how long
Are
have
you in the market? Are you looking for somebody? Are
how long
you
has it been since you guys are broke up?
We broke up at the end of November.
Okay.
He's an amazing guy, really, really good guy. Like, we're still good friends, which is a whole new concept for me. I kind of looked at him and was like, I don't know how to do this. I've never stayed friends with my exes before,
Right.
mostly because they were just not good, healthy relationships. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of toxicity there. Can't talk, words are hard.
No, you're fine.
And so he's great, honestly. I think it just came down to like, you're a great guy, and as cliche as it sounds, like, you're just not my guy. Like,
Oh,
I had that kind of confirmation, and it was just like, you're not my match. But we're still really good friends.
that is awesome. And I'm assuming, since you're saying your ex isn't in the picture with you and your kids, that didn't end well. So is that why he kind of is not in the picture?
So I know with you guys, I probably don't need to get your permission. It's pretty heavy, and I don't mind talking about it. Like, anyone who knows me hopefully knows that I'm really like real and open.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just as like a warning, like, it's heavy.
Okay.
My divorce was just so abrupt and final, is after being married over 7 years. And I knew nothing. I knew it wasn't perfect. I knew he had some pride issues. I knew he had some selfishness issues, and that we obviously had a lot to work on. But I really thought I was happy. And I mean, we were going to the temple. He was teaching Sunday school. Like, I thought we had a really good marriage. One morning, a little over 5 years ago, got woken up to Homeland Security and local police in my home. And I just kept saying, you know, who are you looking for? Thinking like, you know, someone had, you know, run into our apartment complex and they were looking because they were just going through my closet and pulling out like the guns that we had and logging them. And my first thought, you guys, it was like 8 a.m. and I was still in bed. And I was still just kind of waking up. And I literally was just like, oh my gosh, Obama's taking our guns. Like, he was serious. Right.
Totally take it.
I didn't know what else to think. I was just like, what is happening right now? And, you know, this officer just said, well, you know, get clothes on and come out and, you know, we need to talk to you. And I said, well, who are you looking for? And they said, ma'am, we're looking for your husband. And in about 5 minutes of information where I didn't believe him. I guess, you know, he had been deeply, deeply involved in child pornography for years and years. And I had no idea. I actually told him, no, he's being framed. Like, this isn't my husband. You're talking about the wrong guy. Like, it wasn't until he showed me an email about 2 weeks before of my ex emailing someone he was trading pictures with saying, you've got to be more careful about what you send and what email you send it to. My wife doesn't know. And if she did, she'd leave me.
Wow.
And when I saw that, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is, you know, and he just, you know, I kind of looked at him and just said, you know, is this true? When they finally let me talk to him, because when I came out, like, they had tons of officers separating him and I so that we couldn't talk. That email ended up being such a tender mercy though, because that let them know that I didn't know.
Right.
Because of that email, my kids were never taken away from me. And I was never questioned as being, I guess that's really common sometimes for, you know, the wife to actually be a part of it or find out, but not do anything about it.
Well, the wife knows about it. So the wife knows about it. And what generally happens is, you know, because she's worried about her security and finances and the children and divorce, especially in Utah when it's, you know, no divorce culture, at least divorce is kind of frowned upon. And so I worked in Salt Lake for 3 years. And so I think generally what happens if the wife is complicit, meaning that she knows about it, she's seen it, it's considered contraband and you're supposed to report it. So it's like you finding a brick of cocaine in the house and going, I don't really care. It's in the house. It doesn't matter. It's kind of like, well, it's contraband and you knew about it. You probably should have called the cops and said, hey, can you come get this stuff? It's not mine. I don't know why it's here. And so, yeah, if the wife knows about it, it can cause some legal issues and legal problems.
Wow. Well, what a blessing that he sent that email. Like you said, I mean, I'm sure Heavenly Father would have helped protect you anyway. I mean, it probably would have been a rockier road to get to the kids back and stuff, but gosh, how did you manage? Like, what were you thinking in that moment when they were showing you that? I'm sure it was just, I bet you were in shock, and I can't even imagine what was going through your head in that moment.
Shock's a good description. It just, you know, I kind of just went numb. They took him, they let him say goodbye to the kids and me, and they took him out and handcuffed him outside our home, which I was really grateful for. I didn't want my kids to have to see that. And you know, I called my Relief Society president over while, you know, they were there. I called my family and just said, you guys need to come over here. Like, I'm not okay. And shock's a good word for it. I couldn't function, honestly, for about 5 days. I was in the fetal position. I didn't know I honestly didn't know a human could cry like that. It was, it just turned my whole world upside down, like just in an instant. Because I mean, like the night before, everything, it was fine, and then it was just, you know, done. And I haven't spoken to him since the night he was arrested.
Wow.
Is he still serving time?
Yeah, it took a year for him to get sentenced, but because he was trading overseas, it was federal, so he was federally indicted. and he was sentenced to 20 years. He was not only in possession, but advertising, distributing, manufacturing. Like, it was a lot, over 250 counts.
Yeah, manufacturing is the minimum mandatory sentence of manufacturing of 15 years.
He did plea to possession only, so the judge could only give him 20 years, but he said, if I could give you life, I would.
Wow.
Like, and my
Yeah,
whole thing with that was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say every image that's manufactured is 15 years. So if they had 100 years or 100 images, it'd be 150 years. So it's,
As nice as that would be, my whole thing for my victim statement and everything that I wanted was just for all of my kids to be over 18, so
Right.
that we wouldn't ever have to discuss co-parenting or them having to see him, you know, if they didn't want to. So by the time he gets out, they will all be adults and be able to make their own decision at that point.
So your oldest, so your oldest is 11 now, so 6 when that happened. The
Yeah,
other 2 were probably didn't quite understand what was going on.
my baby wasn't even 2.
Yeah. How did you manage explaining that scenario to your oldest child? And the other two were going to miss their daddy too, but I just wonder, like, at that age, like, they can comprehend daddy is gone and not coming back.
Right. And that's where you start. Honestly, it took so much prayer, you guys, so much, just like, Heavenly Father, there's no textbook for this. Like, please just guide me and tell me what to do to protect my kids, to manage this. And with my littles, it was, okay, they understand timeout. So daddy made some sad choices and he's going on a timeout. I tried that with my oldest. My oldest, I don't know how your guys' oldest kids are, but she's just that one that's beyond her years. Crazy intelligent, very mature, emotionally mature. And I tried that. And she came to me one day, a little while after, and said, "Hey, Mom, is it because of this?" And I was just like, okay, you know. And my thing with my kids has been that I don't want to lie to them. I mean, I don't have to divulge things that, you know, are unnecessary, you know, unnecessarily detailed or anything. But I just, you know, kind of let her be where her level of understanding was. But I told her the truth, because she, I mean, I had to appeal to her intelligence. She already knew. And, you know, one parent had already lied and lived a completely double life. I just wanted her to know that she could trust me and that I wouldn't lie to her.
So I guess through this whole thing, obviously, I mean, so devastating. And your candid is so appreciative, because this is a tough subject to talk about. But again, people might be, whether they're watching it live right now or might be watching it live in the future, or might watch it in the future, to hear like how you got through something like this and then had to get 3 small children through such a traumatic experience, and then had to parent by yourself in the future. I mean, that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to for you to have to forgive yourself. I mean, not forgive yourself, but forgive him yourself, but then to help your children get older by yourself, and to actually further your testimony yourself. And so all of it seems very alone. Obviously, we all have Heavenly Father, but no one else truly understands that pain that we're going through. And some people that might watch this at some point might understand it. And so what are some things that you can say about that?
Honestly, yeah, you hit it right on the head. And again, I mean, because I had gone through what I did as a young single adult, I think that's what was like, okay, I'm spiraling. I'm at the point where I either need to give my kids to my family and let them raise them in the gospel and give them a steady childhood and foundation. And then it was just like, am I really considering that? Just like, no, this is not okay. And it's just, honestly, for those first 4 months, I mean, you're right. It was just a savior. I mean, that, and because I didn't have the luxury of it being private, it was in the newspaper the next day. It was, I had friends and ward members messaging me, which actually ended up being like the most amazing blessing, because I've never felt prayers like that before in my whole life. Like, when you talk about feeling prayers, those prayers carried me. The Spirit literally carried me and bathed me in that time, just in guidance and in comfort. And I mean, it was the most painful thing I've ever experienced emotionally, but at the same time, it was sweet and beautiful, and my testimony grew so much. And we're not alone. And like I said, I have an amazing support system, and I know that there's a lot of people who don't have the support system I have, but they really, I don't even like to say that I'm an only parent. I mean, technically I am, but my kids basically have 6 parents, which is a huge blessing. And while they don't have a husband for their mom to see that example of how to have someone love me, my dad and my brothers and my brother-in-law that came along later even have just stepped up to be that father figure for my kids. And I was told in a blessing after it happened that that my kids would be okay, that it would be rough, that there were some rough times ahead, but that they would not be left with the effects of what happened. And I've just seen over and over again in my last 5 years, Celeste was talking about, just the little things that are just like, okay, you're letting me know you're there, and you've got this, you've got us, and I just have to keep doing my best to stay on the covenant path. And that's not always perfect, definitely not, but I just to have that faith and that trust that it will be okay. And while at the time I thought it was like the worst, most horrible, most painful thing that could ever happen to me, it didn't take long in retrospect to realize it was happening anyway. It was already happening. The only difference was I didn't know. And at least at that point, now I could move on and I could protect my children, and when you said forgive yourself, I mean, you were actually right on. There was a while where it was just like, how could I have missed this? How could I have not known? How did I not protect my children?
And I think as a mom, we tend to, when things happen to our children, we tend to turn the blame to ourselves first and say, what could I have done differently? What could I have done to protect my children from this? And sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes there's nothing we can do to protect our children because we don't know.
Right.
And so in your case, there was nothing you could do to protect. You had no clue. And so what you can do now is protect your children.
Yeah, you trust it. I mean, that's the key is that when we get in relationships, to have a healthy and at least a good chance at a good relationship, you have to have trust. You can't be sneaking around and, give me your passwords, let me read all your stuff, and just be a full-time detective all the time, because that's not a good relationship. And so you have to kind of let yourself kind of be vulnerable and trust. And that's why you didn't know, is because you wanted to have a trusting relationship. You wanted to trust your husband. And there's no business being in a relationship if you're always suspicious and always wondering. And I don't want to be in a relationship like that. And I think a lot of us who've been betrayed different ways, not like you, but have been betrayed by our spouses, we don't want to carry that into another relationship. That's something a lot of us have been to counseling and tried to work on those kinds of things, but you just don't want to come back in and say, oh my gosh, I think I see the signs again, and then you start digging around, and then you get caught digging around, and then the whole, like, you don't trust me anymore, and why are you sneaking around trying to find stuff on me? I'm not doing anything wrong. And so it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's interesting is I think that, so I've got a pretty horrific story, not quite to the level that you've got going on.
Okay, first, real quick, I'm just going to interrupt you guys and just say, I appreciate why you're saying that and where you're coming from with that. Hard is hard. Betrayal is betrayal. There's no comparison. There's no, we all have our Gethsemane. We all have our hard. And I don't ever want anyone to think that I'm like, oh, I've got it so much worse that I don't have to deal with co-parenting or even talk to my ex. So I don't know if I'd trade you guys sometimes, but sorry, continue.
No, thank you. Thank you. That was nice of you to say. I do think that that you seem to have handled that really well, that you've been able to, even just what you just said to us right there, obviously you've gained strength and realized that you're strong enough to handle that situation. And you might not have felt like that in the middle of it or the beginning of it, but at the end of it, you've been strengthened by that situation. And if you're like me, if you would have come to me before I went through what I've gone through and said, hey, Celeste, this is what's coming your way, I'd have been like, there's no way. I can't do that. Please, there's no way I can handle that. But like you, I was carried by the Lord. He helped me through. It was super tough, super difficult, and I would never, ever, ever want to do it again. But I would never want to lose what I've gained from the experience, the knowledge I've gained, the strength I've gained, the just knowing that I have the ability to endure and withstand what I've done. Like I would never have assumed that of myself, knowing how strong my testimony really is, that I didn't leave the church or get angry at God for choices that he didn't stop, which he wouldn't. Obviously, he's not going to take someone's agency, but just looking back and seeing everything I've gained, I would never want to lose that, but I would never want to go through it again. And I think probably everybody who's gone through something that's horrific like that, any of us that have been through a divorce, I'm sure, whatever, you've learned something from it and you don't ever want to lose that. And I can see that it's made you, from what I understand and from what I see, it's made you a lot stronger to be able to stand and say, hey, you know what, mine was tough, but so was yours. You didn't want to, you feel like, okay, yes, I've got this managed and you've got yours managed and we're all good and we're going to make it. And I think that's wonderful. I can see that it's definitely strengthened you. You've come out really strong.
Definitely. I think that when something like that happens, I don't know, at least for me, you're given a choice. And, when people say, I don't know how you got out of bed. I don't know how you, like, how do you breathe every day? Like, how did you do that? And, it's just like, what choice did I have?
Yeah.
But, you just, what you said is right on. I had a friend tell me something horrific about her marriage about 4 months before this happened. Her husband just one day went Caitlyn Jenner on her, just completely. Just oh yeah. And we were close, and she told me, and I looked at her, you guys, and I just said, I could never go through something like that. I would curl up into a ball and die.
Yeah.
Like, those were my words.
Yeah.
And that's what I did when I was a little girl. So I have 4 brothers. And when they would chase me, and even playfully, my dad would like chase me and try and wrestle, I was known for dropping to the floor and curling up into a ball, not fighting, not, I wasn't like that firecracker that fights back or, keeps running. I would just drop and cover.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I had handled a lot of hard things in my life. That was kind of my pattern. And you're right. You kind of get to the point where it's just like, okay, I have a choice here. What am I going to do? Am I going to let this make me bitter or make me better? And is this going to transform me. It's going to transform me either way.
Right. For the good.
How
or the
am I
bad,
going to
right?
choose to have it transform me?
Yep. Yep. It's
So
going to change for the rest of your life. Let's make it good change if you can. Yep.
a question I have for you is a similar experience that I had. Was my own divorce was very public in the news, all over the news, in the papers, on all coasts. And so I kind of had to hunker down and protect my family. And it's hard. It's really, really hard to do that. And I didn't want to get up some days. I didn't. And there were some people that were mad at me, and I didn't do anything wrong at the time. I wasn't the person out there doing what he had done, but it was our family that was affected. And I was trying to be the wife and be the mom. I didn't know how to handle things. And yet I still had to get up every day and make sure that my family was fed. And I'm not sure every day they were at the time. But I know for me, we got 2 counselors. When we went through the divorce, I had 2 counselors. I had an in-house counselor or therapist. And then I had somebody that actually came to my home and sat and was basically a fixture in my home, a friend in the kitchen, friends to my kids.
Where do you live?
In Highland, actually.
That's awesome.
And so, but I had somebody come, and then when nobody was watching, they could coach me and help me as a mom, tell me, okay, this is what your kids are going through. They're lashing out on you because they're angry at this situation. They're teenagers. They don't know how to handle this. They're mad about the divorce. They're mad that they had this perfect life. They are mad that none of their friends' parents got divorced. And so I was like, wow, I would have never known that. And so how did you, through your circumstance, were you in counseling? Did your kids go to counseling? How did you do it?
Oh yeah. So they assigned me a victim's advocate right away, which was awesome. I started counseling pretty much right away. My oldest started counseling right away, and I really prayed about, obviously the younger one didn't really need it quite yet. And there was so much to do, you guys, like with court. And I mean, I wasn't working at the time. I was a stay-at-home mom. He was the total like breadwinner. I had to get Medicaid on board, and like I had to piece our life together. I had to get rid of all of his stuff honestly, for the first 5 days, I didn't. I farmed my kids out the first 5 days and went to my mom and dad's house and just basically cried every like moment, like the whole time, except for making decisions and things that had to be made. And besides just like, I mean, by the Spirit. But then my son has high functioning autism, and I felt like he wasn't ready for counseling, and he didn't quite understand yet what had happened, or I don't know. I felt like it would do more damage for him at that point to do like play therapy or something. And so what we did with him was just a lot of talking to see. There's a lot of complicated parts. There's a lot of moving parts to this whole thing, where my son was actually a victim. And my daughter, my oldest, my ex was awful to her. He wanted a boy, and she wasn't a boy. So he was okay with her until my son was born, but then it was like complete favoritism. Like not even trying to hold back favoritism toward my son, and really critical of my oldest daughter, and everything was her fault. If the baby woke up, it's because she was being too loud. So I needed to help her get that addressed right away, because she had a lot more understanding. Where my son, it kind of started with, he didn't even know, because it had happened from the time he was so little, that he didn't even know that dads weren't supposed to do that. Like that wasn't a normal relationship between a father and a son. So I've been through a lot of counseling, and I had been through counseling in the past for other things. So it wasn't like, you know, a huge thing for me to do that. I knew that that was something I needed, because while in the case of divorces, you know, people are like, oh, there's always, you know, two, you know, there's always two people. And I kind of felt at first like, well, no, if anyone has like a kind of one-sided fault divorce, I think it would be me, you know. But I also realized while I didn't know, and it's not my fault, I did realize that there were things that I could have done to buoy up myself, to be more assertive, for knowing the things that I needed to know to protect my kids, if that makes sense. If I had been more the woman that I needed to be, and yes, you want to trust your spouse, you want to, you know, not have that. And people ask all the time, like, well, weren't there signs? Weren't there flags? And it's like, well, yeah. Now I can go back and be like, oh,
Right.
but who's going to put those signs together and come to that conclusion? It was so beyond the realm of
Well, it goes back to
possibility.
trust. It goes back to you trusting. I mean, you can't connect the dots unless you're walking around being suspicious and doing an investigation. It's, you know, you might see one clue here and then 6 months later see another clue, but you're not walking with that mental, those lenses of investigation and suspicion all the time. So
Yeah, I think that you need to make sure it kind of sounds like to me that you kind of still blame yourself. And I hope that's not the case, because I think like we're all imperfect anyway, but like Corey is saying, like there's no way to know when you're in the mix unless you are untrusting of your spouse, right? Like I've kind of looked at my scenario, and I probably should have seen a lot of signs as well, but there was no need to be looking for them, right? Like I didn't need to look for all the small things, because there was no reason, right? So it's like, because I honestly, I feel like I'm not at fault on my divorce either. Now I'm still imperfect, and I wasn't like the perfect spouse. I had my faults, but when it comes to the divorce, I do feel like that was out of my hands, honestly. But I just hope that you, like, just listening to your story, I hope that you realize that as a mom you just didn't know, like you just didn't know. And it's not for your lack of not being the best mom ever. It was just that you just didn't know. You know what I'm saying? So
I do. And I thank you. I can't say I blame myself. I know that he has agency and he had his choices, and this was completely him. If nothing else, I think I just got to the point quickly where I was like, I need to make some changes about me to make sure that I'm not the kind of woman who is attracted to that, who is, because let's just say he's not my first toxic relationship.
right.
So for me, it was like, okay, I needed to love myself enough. Sorry, I guess I'm going to break into our topic. I know you guys usually do that.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
But I'm going to love myself enough to make sure that I'm the kind of woman that I want to be, that I can stand up for something when I know it's wrong, that no one's going to think, oh, she's so sweet and such a doormat that she's just going to let me get away with anything. And I mean, I realized I had a target on my head. I mean, especially after this happened, it was like, I should not be dating. I should not be, because I mean, has like, you know, victim and everything all over that. And I didn't want that. And so I see what you're saying. And I just, to prevent anything like it or any guy like that from ever coming into my life again and thinking that those kinds of things, even if they're different, I don't want to be with the same guy with a different face and a different name, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you there. Like, I think that, I think a lot of people can relate to, maybe choosing the wrong person or having the tendency to choose similar people over and over again. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot to come to a realization like, hey, I'm choosing the wrong type of people. And I need to adjust that and find what would work best for me. And so I'm assuming counseling helped you to get there. And I'm assuming that counseling helped you to realize that you are lovable and you are worthy and you deserve having a spouse that's going to cherish you and love you and keep you safe and keep your children safe. Like, that's what Heavenly Father wants for you. And that's what Heavenly Father wants for all of us. And sometimes I don't know if we believe that, but I think we need to get to that point where we do, where we say, you know what, I'm not going to settle for less because you know what? I deserve the best. Right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
I'm glad to hear that you said that that's important for self-love. So I had speaking of that, I had an interesting situation happen this week. So my ex calls me at work on Tuesday and just out of the blue just said, hey, do you have a minute to talk? And I'm like, what's going on? It's like, sure. She then asks me, like, she said, you went to counseling, right? And I said, yes. She said, well, did it help you? And what did you go to counseling for? And did it help you? And I said, well, what's all these questions for? Well, it turns out she's been engaged twice to the same guy, on again, off again, on again, off again. And she's recommending that this guy go get some counseling because he just doesn't have his act together. He keeps proposing in front of his whole family and then, later on breaks it off. So um, so I just told her the truth. I mean, I didn't want to get into big details with her because she'd get upset if I told her it was because she was borderline personality and I was dealing with that. So I just said, oh, well, I'm working on myself. And I had a lot of negative self-talk. And of course, that's one of the byproducts of living with a borderline is that you, at survival mode, you basically just talk badly about yourself in your own mind. So when they rail on you, you're like, yeah, I already know. I've been telling myself for years I'm a loser. So you railing on me, call me a loser. I already beat you there. I already beat you to it. So it's important that, and I did tell her, I said, hey, I had to work on negative self-talk, and it took a while to realize that, that I was a good father and I was wasn't a bad husband, and, just kind of go down that, I am not a loser that maybe some woman would be interested in going out with me sometime. So, that was going through my therapy, but I think that goes along the lines of what you were saying, is that you have to love yourself. You have to have that positive self-talk. You have to have that positive coaching, and you can't be talking negative in your head and saying, oh, nobody will ever like me. Nobody ever think I'm cool. Nobody ever think that, that I'm worth, fighting for, or worth having a relationship with. And so I read a book a long time ago that is a really old book. It's from England, and it says, so a man thinketh, so he becometh. And I used to always think, oh yeah, it meant like having bad thoughts and then you become a bad person, right? But it was more I think, along the lines of self-talk. Like you really can't let yourself fall in that negative spiral of talking yourself down or talking badly about yourself in your own head. That's dangerous.
Absolutely. I think that anybody who has either been single for an extended period of time, maybe they haven't found a spouse and they kind of question like, well, what's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to find a spouse. Why can't I find a spouse? Or someone who's been through a really tough divorce, that maybe their spouse was abusive with their words toward them. I think that at the end of those type of things, like there is a lot of times where, like you say, Corey, like we're thinking, maybe they're right. Like, if you're told over and over and over again certain things about yourself, supposedly, at some point, it's almost like, oh, maybe they've got a point. Like maybe I am this person that they keep claiming I am. And it's like, how do we get past that? I know there's counseling. Obviously, that's a good, probably the best source at first, right? You get some counseling, you get maybe some cognitive behavioral therapy to be able to relearn how to re-talk to yourself, like what words to say and how to say it. If you think a negative thought, how do you reroute that? Those type of things. But what else can we do to better ourselves, to make ourselves realize that we are precious and that we are of worth and we deserve the best? Any other ideas besides counseling?
I think for me, a lot of it came to being really honest with myself and doing some introspection and being self-aware of the things I did want to improve or change. I'm like I said in my bio, I'm kind of addicted and obsessed now with bettering myself. Like I'd go into psychology if I could, but I just don't have the time to get that degree and stuff while I'm, raising these kiddos. But I think for me, a lot of it has just been doing more things that bring me peace, doing more things that make me feel good about myself, and making sure that those things are in line with what I believe, what I feel. I had to rediscover myself. If you look at pictures of me, like while I was married, besides the having kids like every 2 years, and that just happens. You kind of lose yourself and your identity as as being a mom. But his emotional abuse was so subtle that I literally didn't even see it until out of the situation.
Right.
And looking back, it's just like, even besides like all the crap he was arrested for, and that's a whole nother thing. He was a really bad husband, and he really didn't treat me very well. And like, he was supposed to be like my knight in shining armor after like coming back to the church and getting rid of the last toxic guy before him. I think that was like one of the biggest slaps in the face. It was just like, no, you're supposed to be like what I earned, like, which sounds awful. I know that you don't earn people, but it was just like, this is my temple marriage. This is my
This should be it. This should be my answer. Like I've done my work. I've fought the battle. I should have my prize, right?
right.
Yeah.
Not realizing how lost I was becoming and not myself I was. And a lot of that is, for me, it took shaving my head. I'm not gonna lie. I completely shaved my head a year, I think, after he was arrested. My mom was going through some cancer treatments for skin cancer on her head, and she has really coarse, thick hair. So to get the chemical lotion on her head to get it where it needs to be, she would shave her head. And my sister did it with her a couple of times, and they were just like, you should do it with us. Yeah, no. But then realizing, that would actually be really cool. So it took a lot to do it. I was terrified, but I shaved my head, and it was just kind of a in your face to him, because he wanted my hair long, and I, kept it long for him. And it was so empowering. So I think just even doing things that just kind of empower you and make you feel fierce, besides just, doing your best to go through something with grace and with class, and just trying to make sure that you're presenting yourself and being who you want to be. That was huge for me too, and I kept it that way for a while.
So do you think that it was kind of like, here I am, the new me with no hair, and it almost puts you into a situation where you're like, I now have to just accept myself for who I am and love myself for who I am, even though I'm bald now. Like it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks.
Yep.
Like, why is that lady bald? Why doesn't have any hair? Like, it's that moment where like, I know why I've done this, and I love myself despite the fact I have no hair. Like, do you think that was kind of like part of it that
Oh
came
yeah.
out of that? Yeah.
Oh yeah. And there was a time period I went without makeup, like completely, for I think it was like 6 months or something.
Yeah.
Just to do it, just to be like, you know what, I'm more than my makeup, I'm more than my hair.
Yeah.
And not everyone has to get to that point, but for me, it was like, I matter for who I am inside. I matter for my good heart. I matter for so many other things than, you know, what I have to offer
On the
physically.
outside.
Or I think that's one of the reasons I took myself away from the dating scene for a while, is because I needed to find myself again. I didn't feel like, you know, and there's a lot of controversy with the whole, oh, you can't love someone else fully until you love yourself. A lot of people don't like that. And I get it. I tend to see things very collaboratively and be able to kind of see both sides. And what I have found for me is it's not so much that we can't love other people. I mean, I think that it's harder to, because our biggest relationship should be with ourselves. But I think a lot of it is that you can't allow someone else to love you and demand in a lovingly respectful way that there are expectations for how you're treated.
Yeah.
Until you love yourself and tell yourself, I deserve this, and you know, I'm not going to settle just because I feel like this is the best I can get, or something.
Right.
And to find that love within yourself.
It's
And-
interesting that that you were talking about just earlier, where you're saying, if you looked at my pictures when I was married and your little, and how you are now, you know, because there's different stages. It's funny because over the years, if you go through my almost 25-year marriage, if you look at me when I got married and then fast forward 5 years or so, and you'll see this decline. And my decline was for several years. I did not wear makeup. I did not do anything but just wore my hair straight and long and didn't do anything with it. I wore baggy clothes. I didn't want anything on the outside to distract me from figuring out who I was on the inside. And so it's interesting, if you look at my photos, if you go back through just and see them all, like you can see these stages where I just was like, I don't want to be looked at from the outside. I want people to like me from my inside. And that was for me also. I needed to love who I was on the inside, no matter how I looked on the outside. Mine was a lot longer than 6 months. So you did good, but mine lasted a long time.
And that was while you were married or after?
It was during my marriage.
Oh, okay.
I don't think my ex realized how abusive he was emotionally. I don't think he was doing it intentionally. But he very much was a huge gaslighter. I mean, I couldn't do anything right. Everything was my fault. I was the crazy one. In his view, I always thought I was better than everybody else. And it really just took a toll. Like after you hear that for so long, it's like, dang, like, is this really who I am? And so I really had to just strip myself down and start from the base and start building blocks of love for myself all the way back up. And it took me a really long time, but it was a needed process, because at the other end, I was a much happier person. And I love myself for who I was, not for what I looked like or whatever. You know, it was more like, this is me, and this is why I love me, because I'm a good person, and because I'm worth being loved, you know. And it was a tough process, but I got there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jennifer, did you say you were going to have something? I think I cut you
Well,
off.
yeah, I was just going to say that before I started dating, I mean, when I started the process of my divorce, I checked my children, and I, you know, the 3 that were left at home. And again, they were upset. They were teenagers. Teenagers do not want to go to counseling. You can trick little kids into going to counseling, but teenagers are a little bit harder. And so they were mad at me. And so at the end of it, our divorce was final. And my 16-year-old said, I think you should start dating. I'm like, what? We've only been divorced like 2 weeks. And she's like, Dad's been dating a long time. And so I again called my therapist, the one that came to our house and the one at the office, and said, what do you think? And they're like, you have the green light. You are so healthy. And so again, I started dating. And once he heard that I was dating again, then he was affected. My ex was like, what do you mean you're dating? Like, the kids saying you're dating all the time. And I said, well, what do you think I was going to do? Like, sit around? And he said, no, I thought your standards were too high, is what the response he said to me. I'm like, okay, well. And so then as we went further along, then he remarried 4 months later. And whenever there was a problem, and it always had to do with like alimony or child support, it always had to do with money. Whenever then, like, I remember one time he sent me pictures of his new wife, and I'm going to reserve my feelings about that. But you know what? He would send me pictures and he'd say, you gained 5 pounds. Well, I had gotten down to 93 pounds. Like, I'm only 115 pounds. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, you're going to send me pictures of your wife flexing in the gym because you're not paying me what you're supposed to be paying me? And so it's just, it was like it was, and I was healthy enough to say, I'm not going to say give him the middle finger, but yeah, give him the middle finger, saying, you know what? You have no clue. I'm so healthy. And so whether I gain 5 pounds or 50 pounds, I'm in a really great place. Maybe you should try therapy. And so, and that's kind of where I'm at now, is I feel like I'm in a place where I'm self-secure and I'm healthy, where, yeah, when I want to revert back to the place that I am not my best self that I've been in my past, sometimes where I'm like, check yourself, Jennifer, like, get back to where you know you're your best. And I'm not talking weight, I'm just talking my best emotionally. Then I get to that place, but no one else is going to tell me, because of physically where I'm at. I would rather call my therapist, where she's going to say to me, nope, you know what, don't listen to him. I know the ins and outs. You tell me like the good, the bad, the ugly about yourself, and I know. And so I will tell you, go forward, step back. And so I think that sometimes there are people that are going to be in our way that are just going to be a disguise. And we have to feel good about ourselves. And so once we get to that place, then we're healthy to move forward, no matter the circumstances. And you can tell that you've put yourself in that place, and that you probably know, well, you definitely know your children better than anyone else does, and where they're at, and you know where you move forward from here.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the part where we want to open it up for questions from the audience. We're going to, so we're still on the same topic, but you know, a lot of really interesting things have been said. So the questions can come to anybody. It can come to the host of the show, come to the guest of the show. You can ask any of us the questions you want. I'm going to post the hand raising. You can use your keyboards. Both the Mac and the Windows keys will be in the chat window. So you can raise your hand, and then we'll try to get to your questions and have you turn your mic on and turn your camera on once we've selected you to ask your question.
One
All right.
thing,
So
while we're waiting for
any
this hand to
questions?
come up, I think that one thing that came to my mind while I was listening to Jennifer speak is that I think the core to loving ourselves and finding that ability to accept or only accept what is good for us is that I think we need to know who we really are. I think we need to know that we really are a child, a son or daughter of God, and that with that, we deserve to have the happiness that He wants from us. And so maybe that's an option that people can take if they're trying to learn to love themselves, is, you know, read the scriptures, read the words from the prophets, and not, it's kind of like that phrase, you know, do you believe Christ, or do you believe in Christ, or do you believe Him? You know, like, are these words He's saying, do they apply to you as well? That you are precious, that you are loved, and that you are a child of God, and that you truly are royalty because of that. Do you just hear it and say, yeah, yeah, yeah? Or do you, take that into yourself and really ponder on it and believe it? I think if you get to that point where that's who you are, like you can't help but love yourself, right? Because you're literally the daughter of a king or son of a king. So it's always a good
Beautiful.
spot to go
Perfectly
to. All right. So who wants to manage do you want to manage it, Corey? The name, the people.
Sure. As soon as we see some hands go up, I think
some come up.
we'll have some come up, I guess.
Yeah, it'll happen. It'll get there. But while we're waiting for that to come up, Wendilyn, if you were to give advice, if you're just like, if I came to you just fresh out of divorce that was really tough, and I'm just sitting here like, I'm never going to feel good enough to put myself out there to date again. Like, I can't see why anyone would really want to date me. Like, what kind of advice would you give to someone that's in that type of a situation?
I do think that, I mean, I don't like to be absolute about anything and say everyone should take time because, there are different circumstances and everything. But I know for me, even when I thought I was ready to date, I wasn't. And I think that taking that time to really know yourself, I mean, I kind of went a little crazy in my mini bio, like, oh, I love sunflowers and I love all this. And I was just like, oh, like, this is probably not what they meant. But
Oh,
like, it's been a thing for me to kind of identify, like, what makes me. What do I love? I got rid of everything in the house that reminded that was either he bought or that I wouldn't have bought unless he were involved. I sold things that, I didn't like the decorations and stuff and got things that were me. And I think that just doing things to empower and to honor yourself just really helps with that love. And you need that time to figure out who you are. Because as you date, people are like, oh, so tell me about you. And if you're just like, I don't know, I was kind of hoping you could
Yeah.
tell me what's gonna
validate me and tell me who I am.
I'm a mom. That's what I am.
That's true. For me, the big thing for me was that I got to the point near the end of my marriage where I pretty much gave up all my friends to make sure, listening to her, I was not giving her enough attention or spending enough time with her, so I stopped hanging out with my friends. I stopped having my hobbies like playing golf, anything that took myself away from her. So golf was offensive to her, and working out was offensive to her, and so I just found that after my divorce, I had to actually find myself again. I had to go back out. I got in such a bad habit of not doing activities and not making friends and hanging out with friends that I had to start going out again. So I started, the guys at work would say, hey, we're going to go out to dinner. The typical 40 somethings going to Applebee's, to hang out.
Hey, I do that all the time.
Half price appetizer night.
Yes, right.
Exactly. So I'd be like, hey, I'll hang out with you guys at Applebee's. And so we'd laugh and tell stories and eat ribs. And anyway, then I had to find, activities like going back out to play golf again and even trying new stuff. Like somebody would, did you ever see the movie Yes Man? Do you ever see that with Jim Carrey? Yeah. Where he had to say yes to everything? I actually kind of took a little bit of that advice. I mean, when somebody would say, hey, you want to go jump out of an airplane? I'm like, yeah, why not? Sure. Let's try it. So I had to just get out there and try new things. And I started to really started feeling better about myself. I started feeling like, wow, I'm starting to find myself again. And that's the self-love. You got to self-care. You got to take care of yourself if you're willing to get into a relationship with somebody. And you kind of triggered that when you said that when people asked you, hey, what do you do? I mean, I was in that boat of like, what do you do? I'm like, well, nothing. I mean, I even went country dancing once. Like somebody said, let's go line dancing. And I'm like, never done it. Let's go. Not even a country music listener, but let's go try it.
That's a travesty. Oh.
Let's go swing.
Seriously. Yeah. I think too, though, when we're dating people or married to people, when they don't want us to do those things, that can also be a red flag. It can also be when they don't want us to do the things that we really love to do, like something like golf. Golf is something I didn't take up until my last divorce. I mean, like I took it up because it's not something I never had done. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting older. I'm going to like start playing tennis again. I'm going to take up golf. I'm going to do all the things that I can't do or I can do as I get older. But I mean, like when we're dating people and we're married to people, we want them to do the things that they enjoy. If we really are not so self-absorbed in ourselves and we're not selfish ourselves, we want those people to do the things. I mean, like, hey, if somebody says to me, Jennifer, I really want you to go shopping, I would say, sign me up for that. Because that's like, I mean, retail therapy is a thing. You know what? It just makes you feel better. It makes you like, go get your hair done, go get your nails done, go golf, go do whatever. And so when they tell you to stop doing those things, you're like, wait a minute, why? Why do I have to stop doing the things that I love? I'm not doing anything wrong. Maybe if you're doing it in excess, it can be wrong. It can be a problem, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. And so that can be a red flag too. And so you have to learn to do, like Corey said, you have to go back to the things that you know that you love.
Yeah, and try new things, like be the yes man once in a while. Like I was in Africa and the guys were like, "Hey, have you ever scuba dived?" I said, "Nope." They said, "Neither have I. We're gonna go take some lessons." And we went and got our open water basic. I was like, that was crazy. Like who does that? Like just let's go get our scuba done. So you got to kind of go out there. So Everett's got a question for you or for the group.
We don't
Oh
have
wait.
He's on mute.
You guys keep muting me. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Well, first of all, Wendilyn, I am super sorry that I was not able to host tonight with you. I've got my kids, and you may see them poking their head in here in just a minute. I'm being summoned as we speak, so I'll make this quick. I'm kind of hopping in midway, but I just wanted to I heard a little bit about what you were saying, and I just wanted to find out, and you've probably already answered this throughout the podcast, but where do you stand right now as far as looking at your ex? Are you in a comfortable spot where if you're like, you know what, he's winning in life, whatever that might look like, right? Like he's got a great relationship going on, a good marriage. Would you be like, good, I'm happy for him?
You missed the boat, Everett.
What's so funny?
You totally missed the boat.
I completely missed the boat. I know. That's why I'm saying I've missed the boat. I'm like,
just
late to the party.
Her ex-husband's in prison. So.
Okay, well, great. So, well, let me ask you a question.
Not that that's funny, but.
Let me ask you just another question then off of that. If your husband gets out of prison, I have no idea. I mean, maybe he's in there with my ex or something, although my ex would be in a separate ward. So totally different topic. But if he gets out of prison, let's just say for the sake of saying, tomorrow he gets out of prison and he gets in a relationship and he kind of pulls it all together. How would you feel about yourself? You guys have probably already talked about this. You're laughing at me. I'm not going to ask any more questions then because Celeste is just laughing. Oh, you can mute it. I can still see your face. You're still laughing.
I'm not laughing. Seriously, I'm not laughing.
I'm not laughing. It's a condition I have where it looks like I'm
nervous
laughing,
he doesn't
but
know
I'm
what
not laughing.
you're all talking about.
See, this is why I shouldn't jump in the middle.
No.
But the question really is like, if your ex is okay, would you be happy with that? Or would you be kind of feeling still a little sort of almost like that sucks? Like, where is mine? You know, I heard you say something about like, I was supposed to have all of these blessings and it didn't happen. Like you had this temple marriage and somehow that was supposed to like, you know, be your reward. If he was to come out of jail right now and everything was okay in his life and he was pulling it together, how would you feel? Would you feel a little ripped off? Like, this guy should not be leapfrogging me. That's not fair. I'm doing what's right. He's not, et cetera, et cetera. Or would you be comfortable with that and be like, you know what? Good for him. Because, you know, my life is good and I'm happy with myself. How would you truly feel?
You know, I hope that at some point he is okay and he is in a good spot. I don't have a lot of, information that that's likely to happen for a good while. I don't hate him. I don't. And I think that before I probably would have been just like, well, hey, like, how are you? Okay, how are you happy? Like, with what you did to me, what you did in general. You'll have to go back and watch Everett sometime.
I have no idea what your ex is, but here's the thing. In
I just
general,
texted you.
my point of this whole questioning is, for us and anybody in a relationship, sorry, I've got climbers now. Anybody in a relationship, and I mean, this goes for myself too. Initially, when I looked at my ex, it was sort of like, I have that bitterness, and there's that little piece of me that's like, I want to come out ahead. Like, they don't deserve to be ahead of me in the game, so to speak, right? Like, they don't deserve to have a good marriage. They don't deserve to have good things. But once I started kind of like feeling better about myself and feeling like, okay, look, I've got my own stuff to like be proud of, then I kind of got to a point where it's like, good for them. You know what? Good. I hope they're happy. They lost out. Tough for them. They could have had this and they chose that. You got second best, but at the end of the day, I started feeling okay with them being okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So I totally apologize for jumping in like midstream here. I've kind of been a little bit busy all night. So when I got these guys, I get a little bit of they climb all over me. But I'll definitely go back and watch the rest of it. So, but does that make sense? Kind of my question on that, I think, for relationships.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that, actually. Obviously, my situation's a little bit different. And I think I would have answered it differently, even a couple of years ago, maybe even a year ago. While I don't have, a lot of evidence that could happen, like, I truly think that if he was okay and got to a point where he was in a healthy place in his life and happy and was able to overcome all the things he needs to overcome, I would be okay with that. I love him as a person. I'm very, very hurt by him, and have a lot of questions that I've never answered or asked because I figured, and again, go back, but I kind of decided not to talk to him again because, I mean, he lied to me for 7 years. How could anything else he had to say to me be something I could trust? And it would just mess me up and get in my head, and I needed to step up and take care of my kids. But I really hope that someday he does pull it together, and I wouldn't go back and change it because I didn't know how miserable I was and how lost I was in my marriage with him. And I do now. And I wouldn't change it for who I've been able to become and what I've been able to accomplish. And I still have a long way to go. But I think that was the other thing I was going to say, is to love yourself more, do hard things, show yourself what a bad A you are.
Yeah.
Especially things that you didn't think you could do.
And you know what, Wendilyn, I think too, you and I mean, we're very different in terms of the things that we maybe have struggled with, but I was so bitter and I was so angry about, you did this to our family. Like, this has ruined our whole family. This has exploded. It's public. It's just messy. It's affected other people's lives. And yet, come full circle, we're friends now. It's been a bit, but we're friends, and he's remarried, and he had lost his financial licenses before. And that was 11 years ago. And he just got him 6 months ago. And I wrote a letter on his behalf. And it took a lot. He has a whole different family, but it is also part of forgiveness. It's also part of being whole ourselves. And if we carry that damage that has been done to us around the rest of our lives, we never can be made whole. That's not part of the atonement. And so he can face his own thing, and he has, but I don't want to be responsible for that. And so for me, I could only help him, and knowing that he has been through hell in the last 10 years with what he went through, to help him again, and to know that hopefully he's changed and hopefully he'll make better decisions the next time around. But yeah, it really sucks when it has to do with your own eternal family and what you've lost. And so I totally can relate on so many levels with you.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I think you're doing great, Wendilyn. I really do. I mean, a lot of people I think are probably thinking the way I'm thinking. I don't know how you went through a tough situation, a really tough situation. I think that people who weren't as strong could have just crumbled under the pressure. And it looks like you took all the right steps, and you should be really proud of where you're at.
Absolutely.
You know what I've learned, you guys, and this is actually on my Facebook page, but I love it. It's from Emma Smith, My Story. Strength is not something you have, it's something you find.
Wow.
And I mean, like Celeste was saying, and I said, I looked at my friend and said, I couldn't do that. We do hard things. We all do every day. And we need to give ourselves credit and grace for the hard things we do, and grace and mercy for the things we mess up on.
Yeah.
And for the men that are also watching and a part of this, I mean, it sounds maybe that it maybe is one-sided on some of this. Yeah, us women, we sometimes make mistakes also, sometimes. So.
I was a perfect wife. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Total perfection. So Corey, it looks like Tanya's hand's not working, but she would like to make a comment.
Oh, okay.
So Tanya, if you want to come out. While we're waiting for Tanya, I just want to apologize. Like, I was really uncomfortable for Everett, and so I started laughing because I didn't know how to stop him from asking that question. So I'm sorry. I wasn't laughing at all about the situation because I know it's a tough situation.
I love laughing about the
I think
situation.
I wasn't sure how to handle that, so I apologize.
Better than crying about it.
He had no idea. It was like he thought it was
I
like,
know,
oh,
stop.
typical divorce. It's just poor guy.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, go ahead, Tanya.
I just wanted to say thank you for being willing to share your story. I know it's not easy to share something that maybe you don't want everyone to know about you, but I thank you that you did. And it was very amazing to hear you say that, others people have gone through worse, because that's just a testimony to show how much healing that you really have done, to realize that this was your situation and other people have, similar situations or worse situations. But I just wanted to ask you, because kind of having the same situation, like I've had to teach my kids are older, is that sometimes people get stuck in paths or down a road that they never really wanted to go down, but they just keep going down it, and it gets deeper and deeper and darker. So I think that I would, tend to believe that maybe when you met your husband, he maybe wasn't that person that he ended up to be. He just maybe got so deeper and darker into it. So you can't look at like every person that you meet, that you have to be so careful that they're going to, be the wrong person. Sometimes people just go down the wrong paths and they don't ever expect to find themselves there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I heard something when it first happened that really resonated with me. And even in my situation, my kids are half him. And it would be really easy to paint him as a monster. But I don't want them to ever feel like they're half monster. So I really try to show them pictures of him as a little boy, and pictures when we were first together and things, and let them see. Actually, it's interesting. My oldest, the first time she saw Star Wars, really resonated with that, and watching Anakin turn into Darth Vader slowly, and was just like, oh, that's kind of like my biological dad. And I was just like, yeah, baby, exactly. Like he was a little boy racing, pods and loved by his mama, and it's the same with your biological dad. So, I think that it's helpful for me to realize that. My biggest thing with him, honestly, you guys, and I mean, I hope that I've shown that, like, I'm a really open, down to earth, like, forgiving person. My whole thing with him, everything would have been completely different. I mean, he still would have had to go to jail. I would have turned him in. Things still would have had to happen if he had just confessed and talked to me about it. I would have gone with him to 12 steps. I would have, like, I'm not perfect, but I was ready for that. I could have done that. And the fact that everything that's happened is only because he got caught is just huge for me, because everything is just because he got caught. I don't know that he ever, if he was so past feeling that he ever would have shared and ever, just said, oh my gosh, I just, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's something I have to tell you. I mean, even the night before, if that had happened, it would have been different than me just like, okay, peace out. I'm never talking to you again. And good luck with everything. Like, so, yeah, I think that's important to make sure that everyone realizes that everyone starts out as a good person. And, and we all have our tendencies. We all have things that we are born with that make our, natural man harder to conquer. But it's what we feed. It's our thoughts. It's our secrets. And I think that's why I'm so open. And my family in journal now is just like, hey, we don't keep secrets. We talk about stuff, and we get our skeletons out, because this is where secrets leads you.
Yep, I agree. I think it's important, like, things that are kept secret and harbored within us, even if they aren't really anything big, they can create bigger things. Like, they can turn into bigger things. And so, I think that it can actually, one lie can ruin a whole entire relationship, because the person just keeps, like, almost creating more lies to cover the one lie, and it just is it's a big snowball effect, and it can take you out. So yeah, I think communication is key in any relationship, and being open and honest, even if you have to say things that maybe you don't want to, or maybe that are hurtful, or that maybe you're embarrassed of. I mean, it's important to get it out there just so that it can be processed. And like you said, you would have helped, you would have forgave, you would have helped him through the process if you would have known, if he would have been open and honest. And I think most people are like that. If they just know what's going on, then they're willing to help, even if they don't really like what's going on. So,
Right.
yeah, I totally agree with that.
And I think it's important that,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
well, I just think it's important that your kids know that too, because it's important for them to see that you're willing to, to be there and help them, because they can learn from that a lot, and learn that how important just simple choices are.
Yep, I agree. Thank you,
Show
Tanya.
them that they have the option to make the other choice, that they're
Mhm.
not destined to make the choices that he made.
Yep.
Just because they're related to him.
Yep.
We work on that a lot.
That's really important.
Yeah.
Especially because they're young and they could see that, and fear that, because even though my kids are older, two of them had made that comment to me, and it scared me that they would even think something like that. And mine hasn't even done anything near that what yours have done, but just in choices and relationships with things. And it's just like, no, you're not him. And you can only learn from this and be strengthened by it.
Yeah. Because kids tend to, like, take on, since they can't really control the outcome of things, and they feel helpless. A lot of times they'll just grasp on to whatever it is and claim it, like, oh, I'm like that too, or I'm the one who caused this, because then if they have claim, then they can feel like they have control in changing the outcome, even when they can't. So yeah, kids are notorious for doing that. So I think it's great that you're talking with them and helping them see that, what, that's not you. You weren't a part of that. separating them, giving them their own identity. I think that's crucial. It's a good thing to do. All right. Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate your comment.
You're welcome. Thanks.
All right. Is there any other last questions before we enter our awesome after party? Any others? No? We're good?
Thank you so much, Wendilyn.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendilyn, for coming on. And honestly, I think that your vulnerability was refreshing. I think that sometimes, especially within the church, for whatever reason, like people don't like to talk about what they've gone through, what's happened in their home, their stories. They have a hard time sharing stories because they feel maybe possibly judged or whatever. And I just
No, because we're all perfect.
Of course
we don't
we
want to
are.
share because we're perfect, right?
Like there's a
that's
song
why.
called, Stained Glass Masquerade by Casting Crowns, which is an
Absolutely.
amazing song. It talks about that. You come in with this little stained glass smile and fakeness and hide what's behind. But I'm grateful, Wendilyn, that you came on here and were willing to share and open up and let us into your life and let us realize how amazing and strong you are. And I think that your kids are beyond blessed to have you as their mom and to help them help them through this. Really do.
Thank you guys so much. And thank you for having me.
No problem. If you want to stay on for the after party, you surely can. Everyone's going to open their mics and videos and they can chit chat with us. Or if you
All
can't.
my friends are here.
Oh, cool. Well,
Oh,
good.
good.
Let me
Them,
stop
a lot
and
of
then we'll
them are.
restart. So hold on. Let me
All right.
stop the
Stop
recording.
recording, stop the streaming, and we'll get to the
All right,
party.
hold on. We're going to stop the recording. I think if I can figure out how to do that. Stop.